a new edition of the Heat Treat podcast. Today we have our guest from very, very far away. Very interesting interview today. We got Karen Stanton from HTA, Heat Treat Australia, all the way. I believe you're close to Sydney, right, Karen?
I am near Sydney, yeah.
So good afternoon, good morning to you. Good afternoon for us, and it's been fantastic that we could actually arrange this. We had a bunch of trouble with the time zones, but fortunately we were able to make this happen. So Karen, how are you? If you could just introduce yourself, your company, really quick to the audience, we could make a very quick introduction to what you do. You run a bunch of heat treats all the way from Australia. So if you could just give us a brief summary of who you are, what you do, and the work that you work for, that'll be fantastic.
Excellent. Well, hi, Carlos. It's 8 a.m. here in the morning. I'm based at a location not far out of Sydney. We're still in COVID lockdown, so I'm working from home and on a lot of phone calls and Zoom calls for my days at the moment. So HTA, Heat Treatment Australia, we are in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne in Australia, but we also have a location in Los Angeles, in Santa Fe Springs in California. We've been in business since the 70s. Traditionally, we started in those really basic manufacturing spaces, mining, agriculture, a lot of tool making, tool works. And so we've worked across a lot of sectors. About 15 years or so ago, we moved in the defence aerospace direction. And so that's what our focus is these days. Our Los Angeles facility is almost dedicated primarily to aerospace defence work.
Okay, that is fantastic, but that was a very brief summary, because I'm very thrilled about how a heat treat in Australia. First of all, I would like to know a little bit about how the market is right there. I know there's mining and some applications, but how you ended up heat treating for the American defense sector. I'm thrilled about that story. I guess it's a great story.
Yeah, so each of our facilities really focuses on different things. So it depends on the market that we're in. So our Brisbane site, which is also a head office, so that's in Queensland in Australia, pretty much does almost every process you could imagine. Everything from every sector, basic sector, through to aerospace defence as well. Our Sydney facility focuses more on the commercial work. So we're looking at things like, just the basic mining kind of work, a lot of construction, a lot of repetition parts, conveyor work. And our Melbourne facility is a bit of a mix of all of those things. It does some aerospace defence work because there's a reasonably big aero sector in Melbourne, but it also does a lot of work in the construction and automotive space as well. And then, as I said, LA is basically aerospace defence work. So essentially we set up a site because we look at what the market wants in that particular region. And so there's no reason to put it in a process or approach a sector if that's not necessary in the local market. And so when we first started looking at setting up our Los Angeles facility, we kind of looked at what we wanted to do in that space and what was needed in that space. And so the basic assumption was that the aerospace defence market is big in the US, especially compared to the size of the market in Australia. We already had NADCAP and AS9100 accreditation, so it seemed like an automatic choice for us to focus on something that we were already good at, but that the market was bigger for in LA. So, that was the thought process. LA, like you said, is a really long way from anywhere in Australia. It's somewhere around a 12 or 13-hour flight, but it's still only one flight. So the thought process was, if all else fails and we really need to get there quickly, we can still make it within a day.
Yeah, and those are the good things about globalization. I mean, you just can't get on a plane and actually be there the next day. So that's pretty sweet. Now, so I believe NADCAP and AS9100 will be like what was key to have all the process implemented and saw the niche in LA. So saying, okay, we can actually transfer this knowledge with this quality system with the people and only copy paste it in Australia. It's easier said than done, right? But I mean that's theoretically. Can you share a little bit about that experience that you had, saying, we're a successful company in Australia with 3 branches. Now let's open one in the other side of the country because we have the technology, we have the quality system, and we see a niche. But that takes a lot of logistics. Also finding the right people, interviewing. I don't know if I will assume that Australia and the US work culture is very similar, but we're talking California, which is a very unique niche. So what was your view on that?
So maybe I'll just take you back a step and talk you through us achieving sort of our AS and NADCAP and why we did that in the Australian market. So when we first entered aerospace and defence about 15 years ago, there was no heat treater in our country that had AS or NADCAP accreditation. So as the defence and aerospace sector in Australia started to develop, there was no local supply of heat treatment processes that could meet the requirements, the prime specifications, the OEM requirements. So we essentially got approached by the federal government, who said, we want to develop this sector, and we want to buy F-35s, and we want Australian companies to be part of that build for the F-35s. And so that was sort of the first part of our journey when we said, okay, look, that sounds like a good idea. And at the same time, the market for manufacturing in Australia was really in decline. We had a lot of work going offshore to China, to India, and we were starting to, as a sector, really suffer. And we were looking at that point for new opportunities anyway. So it kind of made sense to us. Back then, the market was so small that there wasn't enough work, like just to set up a facility for aerospace and defence and have it reliant on the local economy, because it just wasn't possible. Even these days, the market is bigger, but it's still not the size or anywhere near the size of what is in the US. To put it in perspective, the population in Australia is the same as the population in just California. So that tells you the kind of markets that we're working with. So, so that journey started about 15 years ago, and we took it reasonably slow because, again, there's no support for NADCAP accreditations in Australia. There's no one you can go and see. There's no courses you can do in the country. There's no way to actually, enable that process faster. So our staff, even from Australia, were heading to LA to do training courses, to meet other heat treaters, to talk through the process, to get the knowledge that we needed to implement it back in Australia. And we also brought across a few technicians and a few skilled people in the area to help train our staff as well. So, it wasn't an easy process. And even today, if we need parts that are aerospace accredited, or we have to send, meters back to the US for calibration. So the industry in Australia is still a really difficult space for aerospace and defence. And I suspect that's why we're still the only heat treater in the country who has, AS and NADCAP accreditations, and we're only one in the aerospace defence sector. So, really good situation for us, because we invested early, and now we're in a primary position as the economy grows and as defence grows. But is a long and sort of arduous journey. But having said that, if you take such a long time to develop processes and you establish systems within your organisation, you're fairly confident at how good they are and how robust they are. And so we were reasonably confident that we could take all those processes and implement them in a new location. So you mentioned about the people. We actually transferred a couple of our Australian employees who are still there to this day. So I think this is about year 5 now. So 2 people went, and one's the branch manager and one's the admin manager, and they're still located in LA. I suspect they want to come home, but unfortunately COVID and the business doesn't really allow for that yet. They haven't been home for years, unfortunately. So it's a tough environment for them. But they're doing a really good job. The business is growing. And so that's sort of how we manage it. We have our people on the ground there, and we trust them, and we know that they're going to do the right thing by us. And lots of really early morning phone calls, conference calls, Zoom calls, FaceTime, looking at parts and that kind of stuff. But all of our equipment is actually remotely controlled. So all of our managers in Australia can log into LA and they can look at the equipment and they can help monitor it if they're sleeping there, or we've got pretty high digitalization through the whole organization. So that sort of helps, with those processes as well. Does that give you a good picture of our journey?
Totally. And actually, I just would like to say that you are the living proof as a company that you have a robust quality system, the technology and the accreditation and the people. You can transfer that to any location in the world, and through technology, you can actually manage the office the same way you manage your corporate headquarters. But of course, I believe there will be some tweaks to the system but there, I believe those will be the lessers, right? Just to for the local regulations. I have very little experience working with Australia, the market, but I have very few. If I remember correctly, you have very different NFPA regulation, which is for the combustion and safety regulations, that in the United States. So things like that, I believe, caught you off guard when you had imagine, like, we're just gonna copy paste it, and then you start to finding the things that didn't work as a copy paste for sure. What were some of those that come to mind really quick? I'm asking about the headaches that you had transferring your quality system, right?
Yeah. You know what? There were a lot, because whilst we have similar cultures, the rules and regulations are so much different. Australia is a highly regulated society, but regulated in different ways. So we have high levels of, the way we treat employees, leave requirements, pay requirements. That's all heavily regulated, but it's all really high. So, for example, every Australian employee that we have has 4 weeks annual leave paid, and they get paid at a higher rate for their leave than they do when they're actually at work. If you take that process and you put it into a site in LA, the new employees are pretty happy with that kind of arrangement. So, things like, spreading our culture, to the new people and making them understand that we think, work-life balance is as important as, making sure the job gets done, and treating our people well and making sure they're paid at the right rate. All of those things are really important to us. And I think that's why we employ people and they stick around for such a long time. So that the employee part or the people part didn't seem too hard if we followed those rules. The part that was difficult was things like the power and the gas, as you suggested. We didn't realize when we went into California, it's not, that California has different rules. It's that counties and areas within California have different rules from the state. So we didn't even know what the power requirements were until we picked a location. But you know how long a heat treatment furnace takes to build? You need to build the furnace 12 months before you have a place to put it. So we essentially had to rent a facility, establish ourselves, put the shingle out the front before we even had a furnace in the door, so that we would know what the requirements for that equipment was in the location that we got it. So that's a year of paying rent and establishing a facility and having people on the ground without doing any work. You can understand that it was a tough process. And the other thing that I think we came across is that there's no funding or finance for Australian companies in the US, and there's no funding or finance from Australian banks for a setup that's not in Australia. So the entire US setup for us was all paid upfront in cash. And so another reason why it took us so long, because we had to have the reserves there to know that we could make it, through to the production phase until we're actually earning revenue. So, we've got 3 age hardening furnaces, a vacuum brazier, and obviously all the testing facilities and all the rest of the setup. That's a lot of money to come up with up front before you make any money.
It is, and actually I gotta ask you this question, which comes to my mind. What's first, the chicken or the egg? Did you have a contract before landing or deciding to open a place in the US, or did you open a facility, you bought some furnaces, and you start knocking on doors for some work?
Well, the way you say that, it didn't sound so smart, but we just arrived and decided we'd look for it when we got there. Um, we had customers, Australian customers, that were based in the US. So we already worked with a lot of the primes. We're doing a lot of work on the F-35 program, worked with Northrop Grumman Mission Systems over in Baltimore, Harris in Florida. We already had that work that we were doing from Australia, and our thought process was that we would leverage those relationships to develop new work. It sort of worked, but once we got there, we found that the market was much different than what we expected. And those particular clients aren't necessarily our biggest customers now. The biggest customers we've got are the raw material suppliers, companies like SSA and Universal that actually need raw materials processed, in huge quantities, who couldn't get turnaround, who are really struggling with customer service and the quality of the product. So that turned out to be the biggest market that we started with, and not the finished processing of some of those aerospace parts. So it didn't really work out the way we planned. So I'd like to say it was good management, but maybe a little bit of good luck too.
And I believe you took a great, it's called leap of faith, so I believe you say, we got this service, we got this team, we got the furnaces, the market is not big enough, and we believe we have potential. Let's go to California and start a heat treat plant. That takes a lot of courage, and I respect that a lot, and I celebrate with you that you are being successful, and you should decide what's next. Are you going to conquer Texas? Are you going to conquer Florida, Michigan? I mean, you did it all the way from Australia to California, so I believe it's like playing Risk now. So which is your next location?
Yes. Look, we absolutely want to expand, and we want some more sites. I think what we're going to do first is expand the site we've got, because there's still so much potential in the same region, and we can use the same infrastructure. I was only just chatting to our landlord the other day, and he's got a building that's free next door in about 6 months. So we're planning how we can knock the wall down and double the size of the facility, and put some more equipment in. So that, I guess, that'll be our next step. And then after that, there's definitely some of our customers that would really like us to be on the East Coast, because they don't like shipping parts all the way to California. So that seems like the next step. Having said that, Lockheed would be pretty keen on us probably going to Texas and being located near there. There's a couple of other Australian companies that have made that leap too, to Texas, which we could co-locate with and probably draw off some of their experience that would help the process. So I think we're just going to grow our LA facility, and then when that gets to the point where we're really comfortable that it can operate, and we don't have to put too many more resources into it, that'll be the time we take the next leap.
That's fantastic. So now let's go a little bit into technical issues. Now, you mentioned you got your 3 locations in Australia, different time zone, different cities that are very, very far away. For the guys that don't know, to go from a city to another city in Australia, you have to take a plane most of the time, right?
Oh yeah.
Is that a first statement? The locations are very, very far
it's a flight.
It's a flight, like going from Los Angeles all the way to Miami. I mean, it's very big.
If you wanted to go from our Brisbane site to our Sydney site, it'd be about a 10-hour drive or an hour-and-a-half flight.
So they're pretty far away. Now, So you're managing 4 locations and more to come, which what you're saying. What are your standard KPIs or indicators, or what do you monitor on each facility? Customer satisfaction, optimization. Of course, we have talked about in this podcast about furnace utilization. But having said that, how do you standardize those? Because I saw your webpage, and you have aging, you have austemperate, you have case hardening, you have aluminum, which there are different furnaces with different process variables. What will you say it's key to standardize each location and be able to measure the performance of each location?
Is technology and being able to manage all that data from different sources in different ways. So we have our own system that we built. We call it HeatTrack.
HeatTrack?
HeatTrack. Yeah, it's a custom system that we built for ourselves. we tried a lot of systems out in the market, and we just gave up and decided that we could do it better because we wanted what we wanted. And perhaps the way we went about our business didn't necessarily suit the way the software was available in the market. So, and we have technology at all of our sites, which means we bring data in, real-time data that gives us the information we need as it's available. And each site has its own, set of KPIs that we see on every management person within the organization has their screen that has the KPIs for all 4 sites on the same page. And so you can just at a glance go, okay, green, red, what's going on there? And that's the way we manage the business. And the KPIs are adjusted for the management team. So the quality manager will have different KPIs on his screen, as I have on my screen. Or the branch manager in LA might only be looking at LA and have the others off to the side because they're not particularly, key to his daily work. So, it's customizable, and it's really making sure the people in our organization have the information they need when they need it. We still manage the same things and the same KPIs across the whole group. Things like the turn time and lead time, delivery time stuff is, it's important, and it's probably one of the most important things. When we first established in California, our customers said, we understand that things go wrong. We understand that, things get delayed, the furnaces break down, or there are problems. What we don't understand is why you can't tell us if our goods aren't going to be ready when they're supposed to be ready. So that for us, those things, they're the most important. The customer service angle, you can make mistakes and you can, be late on delivery, but if you keep a customer updated and you communicate with them, then they're more likely to work with you rather than, look for another source. So those types of things, the delivery times and lead times are really important, and the customer communication is essential.
I believe, and you said a great thing, I believe that not a single company is perfect, right? And the way you handle your mistakes with the customer makes you look more professional. Or if you don't share, if you don't handle the mistake or the error on a professional way, you can get spotted as a liar, as a bad company, right? If you tell, and this is my opinion, Carlos, and this is what we go for. Mr. Customer, we made a mistake. We're not going to make it, right? We're looking what went wrong, right? We're going to tell you how we're going to fix it. We're going to give you the update as we have it, and we're going to make sure this does not happen again. They might not be happy to hear that, but I believe it's the way to handle this.
I agree completely. We have a really transparent system. If something goes astray and a part or a job gets treated incorrectly, or it's late, or we just put our hand up and say, look, here's what happened, here's how we're going to fix it, here's what we've done, and we share our NCRs with our customers, and we make sure they know that we've documented it and that we have an approach so that it won't happen again. But not everyone's perfect, and you always have new staff coming through a facility, or older staff that have just had a bad day, or it just happens. It doesn't happen very often, but it still happens, and you just have to be really transparent and honest with your customers and make sure they know that you're taking responsibility and that you'll resolve the issue and you'll try to make sure it won't happen again.
And I got a question for you that you are very remotely isolated from, let's say, the supply chain, China, the United States. I believe that that you import a bunch of stuff, right? I will assume that. And now with COVID, the supply chain of the world slowed down. Do you have problems filling up your supply base? I don't know, maybe alloy or trays, or how was your experience being on such an isolated location with the supply chain?
Yeah, look, we have had issues, especially as you said in the last couple of years. When COVID first hit, sort of in, I guess that was a year and a half ago now, March, February last year, we had a pretty consolidated response from our federal defence and defence industry ministers, who were really proactive in our space and helped guide defence companies through understanding what their supply chain was, where the risks were and where we may be exposed. And so they drove that down to all SMEs, which you would think would be a strange thing that a federal government department or minister would drive that process. But they did, and they were really proactive in going out to all defence businesses and saying, go assess your supply chain, find out where the weakness is, where are the things that you're going to get stuck that you can't deliver those goods to the Australian Defence Force, and where you can't, complete your production quantities for your export market. And so we did that early on. We put a lot of stock on the shelves, an expensive process, how much stocking up on things like thermocouples and material supplies is, but that helped us through those early times when we thought that we didn't know where the supplies were coming from. These days, it seems to have cleared up. We're not really having any issues. Deliveries take a little bit longer, as you would expect, given the rules and regulations they have to go through. We've actually had some wins in COVID because we've just purchased new vacuum furnaces from Seco, and they had an order cancelled. So we picked up 2 vacuum furnaces from Seco Warwick at a reasonably reduced price, which were immediately ready. So, we had some wins as well. We actually have 3 furnaces that have just landed in Australia from Seco, a new vacuum brazier and 2 vacuum hardening furnaces for our Sydney Melbourne facility. So there've been some positive supply stuff out of COVID too.
Mm-hmm. And from our conversation and what I'm hearing, you are a company that have a lot of faith on reinvesting. I mean, you open a facility there, you bought a bunch of stock before when you saw that the supply chain was gonna slow down. On these times, you say you're buying brand new equipment, so that speaks a lot and give us the picture of how the culture of reinvesting and the drive of HTA, about expansion. It is, we had a podcast, it was, I believe, with Chuck Thomas. He was a metallurgical engineer, and he mentioned that a big error of heat treaters was that they were not reinvesting a lot of their profit on the shop floor. And from where I'm hearing from you is that you're investing huge deals of very significant investments and looking at the long term. So congrats to you, and that's very respectful, and we wish you the best. Now, going back to KPIs really quick, if you were to choose only 3 KPIs in order to handle all 4 locations, what this will be?
Okay.
That's a tough one. Sorry to put you on the spot, but it's that's part of the show.
Well, obviously it has to be the dollars, because that's what drives the business. So it has to be the revenue against budget. That's a given. It has to be, either some sort of measure for customer satisfaction. That's a given. And, the primary measure, I think, is delivery on time. And so I think that would probably be up there. And then the other thing would be NCRs or defects, which, tells you whether your quality is working or it isn't.
And you brought a very interesting
There's so many more.
Yeah, there's so many more. I will use utilization for sure. I don't know if that will be in your top 3, but for us will be for utilization, of course. Dollars per kilograms produced. But you mentioned customer satisfaction. What's your input on how to measure customer satisfaction? Because most of the companies, they send surveys, cheap mail, because the quality systems actually requires for customer satisfaction data, right? But most of them, they just send a survey maybe once a year, which I believe that's very weak to measure customer satisfaction. What's your input on that?
So we collaborate a number of KPIs to get to customer satisfaction. One survey probably doesn't really tell you what you want to know. and you find that, well, firstly, the response isn't particularly good usually, because business owners and managers have got so many other things to do than fill in a survey to tell you how they think you've gone. And so surveys, maybe we might do them every 3 or 4 years because they're required as part of a quality system, but I don't think we rely on them. Our heat track system actually has built-in customer service metrics and parameters. So our system actually allows customers to put their own purchase orders in, to get their own jobs picked up or delivered, to check on the progress of their own work. And at all times through that, there's allowances and options for a customer to tell us if they have an issue or if a job hasn't been delivered the way it wants. And we take all of that data and feed that into our customer service matrix that tells us, where all the issues are coming from, if a customer is unhappy, if something didn't happen according to the requirements. And because it's part of them doing the work that they do in our own system, it's not onerous for them, and they actually feel like they're contributing. So I think we have a pretty much different customer service system than any other heat treater I've seen. And it's built into our system to make sure we get constant feedback.
I believe it's a win. I mean, if you have the customer engaged to your customer satisfaction system, and you can actually have metrics and show those to the customer, I believe you're on the other side. But this could be counterproductive if you have some late deliveries or quality issues, right? Let me share what I do, right? Because I don't think the heat treater don't have this customer satisfaction thing. So now with Zoom or Teams or you name it, we try to get the key users, purchasing, quality, I don't know, manufacturing or production, or how you want it, the key guys from our customers, because we do not serve only one guy. We serve, the guy in the warehouse, logistics, purchasing, manufacturing, right? Projects, I don't know, right? If you have a plant manager, that's like a home run. And we gather all the data and saying, okay, guys, we're doing fantastic on this. We have these spots, but this is our data. What's your feeling? What's your your scoreboard for us, right? And they sometimes will share the scoreboard for you, but you have to make the meeting happen. And now with the Zoom, with Teams, with Skype, it's really easy to get that interaction. So do you use Zoom and Teams a lot with your customers nowadays?
We use it for customer interaction, especially. We started obviously during COVID because it was necessary. And we certainly use it for introduction meetings with new customers, to get an understanding of what their requirements are. We use it all the time with primes. Obviously, we're doing quality audits via Zoom now. We have an AS9100 audit.
What do you do? I gotta stop you there. You just mentioned something I believe everybody's facing this. Quality audits by Zoom or Teams. Yeah. What's your opinion on that?
Well, there's no choice is the bottom line, especially for companies in Australia. If you want to get an audit done and you don't have an auditor in the country and they can't travel, there's either they keep extending our accreditation, or they find another way to do it. And we found another way to do it, and it seems actually like it's working. I think it might be good in the future to have maybe some of those those in-between audits done by Zoom, so that there's less travel, less invasion into your business, and it's more efficient. And then those substantial ones, the reaccreditation ones, need to be done on site. So there should be a combination going forward of using the technology, which makes it better for both sides.
Reduces travel, reduces costs, and as you said, the big audit, has to be on site by an auditor. But if you just want to review paperwork and revisions, or maybe the documentation audit, the first phase, I mean, you can do it by electronically dropping price down. So yeah, I believe that's a great idea. If we got any auditors in the audience, that's a great idea coming from Karen. So you have to travel all the way from the States to there. So I was going to ask you, Karen, so you're in the middle from China and from the US? Do you import a bunch of stuff from China and the US, or what's your main source of supply?
Depends on what the products are required for. As you know, aerospace and defence have FARs and DFARs attached to them, so we can't use anything but accredited sources. So
Okay.
aerospace and defence supplies are mostly from the US. We use some things from China for our commercial shop. We get a lot of our baskets made in China, the jigs and things, which are lower cost there. And they can actually manufacture and deliver really fast and with a reasonable quality. So it really depends on what we need it for and what the requirements are. But I think we pull in from all sources. And as I said, we get our furnaces from Poland, Seco Warwick, mostly, especially the vacuum furnaces. The age hardening furnaces we buy out of the US. So it depends on what the requirement is and what we need the part to do.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's been fantastic talking to you about heat treat, especially heat treat in Australia and California, right? And in the future, maybe Texas or the West Coast. And having said that, I believe you have a bunch of advices or experience that you have learned through your career that not heat treat related, but it might be business related, it can be personal related, it can be anything related. But if you were to have had an advice, before doing all such an expansion, entering the heat treat industry in Australia, what advice would you have liked to be advised, right, by others that you learned it through your entire career, through failures, through experiences, through wins? You could travel back on time and give an advice to your younger self, what it will be?
The key for me in our business is people. Equipment can be replaced. You can buy those things in, but people are the key. Our business is labor intensive, so looking after your people, making sure that they have everything they need to do their job, that they're happy at work, that they're well remunerated, that they have a good work-life balance. That's the most important thing to me, because then they'll turn up every day and do what they need to do to make your business successful. Unhappy people in our industry does not make for good outcomes. So that for me is the most important thing about what we do.
So that was Karen Statson from Heat Treat Australia. I believe that's a great advice, and most of the companies should actually hear this. And if you got a happy employee, a guy that wakes up and he wants to go to work, I believe you are 90% over the goal, right? The process and all the other stuff, easy come, easy go. You can actually do it if you have a great quality system. You got the technology, but if you have an unhappy employee, things won't get, you won't improve things. Things will get done, but they won't get done with passion, right? And I believe that's what differentiates great companies from average companies.
Agree.
Okay, so I would like to remind you that we're loading weekly Heat Treat podcast by the experts today. We had such a great lady, Karen, all the way from Australia, managing 4 locations. Karen, do me a favor and go like this. We're gonna put go like this, Karen. We're gonna put subscribe, give us a like. Go like this now, Karen. Give us a like. And like I'm telling everybody, when I get my YouTube check, I'm gonna split it with all my guests in the shows. So instead of Heat Treated, I can be a YouTuber. So this was Karen Statson from Heat Treat Australia. We'll see you next week.